everybody. My name is Sarah O'Leary Driscoll, and I will be proposing a project called Scientific Literacy Development in Latinx Students through Immersive Research Experiences. Just to have a little bit of a disclaimer to start, I know that there is some controversy of what term to use in terms of Latinx versus Latino, but because in the educational community, Latinx has become more prominent, that's what I will be using in this presentation. So to introduce this topic, Latinx individuals make up 20% of the workforce, but only 8% of the STEM workforce. And that is a significant discrepancy. So working in STEM requires scientific literacy. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah O'Leary Driscoll, and I will be proposing the research project titled Scientific Literacy Development in Latinx Students through Immersive Research Experiences. Just to get a little disclaimer out of the way, I know that there are different opinions on whether you should use Latinx or Latino when referring to this community, but I'm going with what is prominent in education, so I'll be using Latinx in this presentation. So Latinx individuals make up 20% of the total workforce, but only 8% of STEM workforces. And we know that working in STEM requires scientific literacy skills that are developed through educational experiences. So some of this discrepancy may be due to roadblocks for Latinx students in terms of their access to inclusive opportunities. So what this research project is meant to do is to evaluate how an immersive research experience that purposely integrates students' cultural identities can influence their science literacy and their perspectives towards STEM fields for their future. So for a little bit of background, when we look at science literacy, we're talking about students being able to think metacognitively, read and write in a scientific way, and develop scientific arguments. But in order to actually develop these skills, they need access, specifically to opportunities to use scientific language in everyday situations, to negotiate among the different discourse genres of sciences, so the different fields, and to collaborate with peers on the meaning of scientific language. We also have something called the third space that we want to look into the development of. So this is how students would navigate specific ways and beings of how scientists work, and also integrating this with their own social and cultural identity. And Wallace considered this a third space. So if you kind of look at this here, you have the out-of-school discourse and the school-based discourse. So think of this as science and cultural with that kind of hybrid in the middle. Science literacy means that students think, behave, and communicate in ways that are representative of experts in the field. So one of the ways they can build those skills is to take part in research, which is reflective of the field. And research into this as an academic pursuit has shown that research-based experiences at varying levels are beneficial to learning science at both high school and college levels. And they've also shown that the access and timing of these opportunities made a big difference in terms of their effectiveness. When talking about Latinx students in STEM specifically, one of the positive things that has happened is that in the early 2000s through about 2013, the number of Latinx students in higher education rose by 111%. However, this population is still lagging behind their peers in terms of actually completing their degrees and moving on to graduate programs. One of these reasons may be that their lives and cultures outside the classroom are having an impact on what they choose for their educational paths. That can be related to the colleges they choose to attend, the programs and experiences that they want to pursue, and basically how they feel about the programs that they're in. If they have a feeling of familismo, so basically togetherness, relatedness, a virtue of looking at the whole for the community. And in ways in colleges, this feeling is often inhibited by competitive culture in the classroom, and also the impersonal interactions that come from being in a large class. So to give a little bit of context, I have been lucky to work with Dr. Melissa Lincheski in the Department of Earth, Atmosphere, and Environmental Sciences. And she has asked me to be a part of her research experience for undergrads to actually do some investigation. So for this cohort, there are 8 students. They're all Latinx first-generation college students, and they're all currently attending universities that do not offer them research opportunities. So the program that's due this summer is 8 weeks in length, They'll start with 2 weeks at NIU to build some skills and develop the research questions. And then they will go down to Mexico for 4 weeks to actually implement their data collection and work in the field. And then they'll come back to NIU for 2 weeks to do data analysis, draw some conclusions, and actually present their research. So the focus of their research topics are those that are important to the local community in Mexico. So one of them, for example, would be looking at the water quality in the cenotes where the tourists swim, because this is an area pretty close to Cancun. This whole program is funded by the National Science Foundation. As you can see here in the picture in red, that's approximately where the students will be working. And this is the webpage from NIU with a picture of a previous cohort. So in terms of the methods that I'll be using, I'm going to be using mixed methods. So the first and probably more prominent being qualitative. So I'm planning to do observations of the students as they're working. So as they're in the field, as they work with their peers and the faculty that are involved, and just basically are being involved in doing science. I'm also going to develop some journal prompts specifically for the students, for them to talk about their experiences and their problems, current progress of their research, just to see kind of how they communicate changes. I'm also going to be doing a couple of interviews with students. Part of this is really just ethnographic in nature to really get to know the students. I will be down there with them, so that will be part of that as well. And I really would like to know what their backgrounds are and their path to science and how their cultural identity has influenced that throughout their lives. And then the last thing for the qualitative aspect is that I will be part of evaluating the students' final projects and presentations. From a quantitative aspect, I'll be looking at pre and post survey data. And the questions on these surveys are reflective of aspects of scientific literacy, students' perspectives on science as a field, some feelings that they have about the program, and some of their plans for the future and how they may or may not have changed. There is also historical data where previous cohorts have done these surveys, but they have not really been analyzed as a large data set as of yet. So in terms of the actual analysis, I imagine that this will be a continuous part of the process for the qualitative aspect. So as I look for patterns, I'm specifically going to be looking at students' language related to science, how they talk to each other, how they talk to the faculty, what kinds of words they use, and also their ease and confidence when they actually are out in the field problem solving and doing the actual work of science. The coding that I'll be doing will likely be done with a program like QDA Minor Lite or something similar. For the quantitative analysis, I'm not sure what statistical software I'll be using, but a Mann-Whitney statistical analysis is likely for the pre and post survey data because it is Likert scale. And then I'd also want to look at some trends and responses based on demographic variables such as age and gender. So the implications for practice are very broad. First of all, we want to promote STEM literacy in diverse populations of students. So the more that we know, the better that we can do that. I think this will also help showcase how research experiences can influence STEM literacy specifically for Latinx students. And also because this program purposely integrates the students' cultural identities, we can look and see if that has a differential impact on Latinx students' progress. And if that is true, that could be a potential model for the future for other research programs, especially for undergrads, to start to integrate cultural identities into how the research is completed. I also think implementing this on a smaller scale would be great. So I could see embedding activities similar to what they're doing in a curricular setting, even in my own classrooms. And having this information can help to design it appropriately for whatever students you might be working with. In terms of limitations, the sample size for the qualitative aspect is probably one of the biggest ones. Also, it is specific to undergraduates, so it is a specific age range. It may or may not represent a larger population because of the small sample size, and they do self-select into the program, and so the applicability may be somewhat narrow because of that. I'm also using pre-created surveys, so the questions are already determined before I'm starting this project, and the quantitative data will cover a longer time span than the qualitative. The other one is basically there is some subjectivity here when I'm looking at kind of assessment of language and confidence and things like that. But that's where the coding will come in to basically solidify the results that I would get. In terms of future plans, I can see interviewing previous students from the RAU program would be really beneficial. I would like to co-create some survey questions for future cohorts to get at maybe some specifics that come out from this research. And then also trying and implementing and analyzing how this type of experience with a specifically cultural identity-oriented research experience might work on a smaller scale and with different age groups. So I'm really excited for this research for the summer. It's a great opportunity for me to start off in my doctoral program. And thank you for listening to my proposal. And here is my bibliography.